In this video, I will be talking about Armored Core 6 through the end of the first chapter, including various boss fights contained within it. If you want to go in blind, this is your warning. Not sure why you clicked on a video about Armored Core if you want to go in blind, though. I think it's safe to say that there's no studio that's been more influential over the past decade and some change than FromSoftware. From has gone from an extremely niche Japanese studio, hardly known outside of Japan, to one of the most beloved and best-selling game companies out there due to the rising success of the Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring meta-series, genuinely creating the genre known as the Souls-like. Even outside of Souls-likes, elements of FromSoftware's design have crept into virtually every video game out there these days. It's harder to find a game that doesn't borrow something from Souls than it is to point to examples, whether it's the Bloodstain system of recovering lost resources, the messaging system of asynchronous multiplayer communication, invasions as a PvP system, or the general storytelling ethos of indirectly hinting at a larger narrative. Demon's Souls and its successors have become ubiquitous across all of gaming. FromSoftware didn't get their start with Demon's Souls, though. Although that, and then Dark Souls, ended up being the company's claim to fame in the West, FromSoftware are an old-guard Japanese software company founded all the way back in 1986, with their first foray into gaming being the first-person dungeon crawler Kingsfield for the original PlayStation in 1994. What we now think of as the Soulsborne games can directly trace their roots back to Kingsfield. And so, in spirit, that type of dungeon crawler RPG has been FromSoftware's bread and butter from their very inception. But FromSoftware used to have a much more diverse selection of games than they do now. Not just releasing dungeon crawlers like Kingsfield, Shadow Tower, or Eternal Ring, but survival horror games like the Echo Knight trilogy or Kuon, hack-and-slash games like Otogi, weird one-offs like The Adventures of Cookie and Cream, ninja action games like Ninja Blade or one of the Tenchu games, and, of course, lots and lots of mech games like Metal Wolf Chaos and the Armored Core series. Due to the massive success of the Souls games, FromSoftware have been focusing strictly on those games for the past decade. 10 years ago, in 2013, they published the last game in the Armored Core series, Armored Core Verdict Day, and since then, the only game they've published that has not been in the Souls-like genre has been Deracine, a smaller PSVR exclusive title released in 2018. The trick is, FromSoftware didn't suddenly get good, if you will. This has been an extremely interesting studio right from the start. I'm a big fan of the Kingsfield series. I think those games are overlooked classics in the West, and although the Soulsborne games are my favorite games FromSoftware has ever produced, I would love to see them return to their first-person dungeon crawler roots someday with a Kingsfield 5 or a Shadow Tower 3. That's why it's so nice to see FromSoftware take a break from the Souls-like genre and create something completely different with Armored Core 6. The Armored Core franchise is a blind spot for me. I cannot say how well this game captures the spirit of the previous games in the series, because this is my first Armored Core game. But what I can say is that this is definitely very different from the Soulsborne series, and taken for what it is indeed very, very good. At the time of writing, on August 25th, I've just completed the first of the game's 5 chapters. I played a lot of this game yesterday, launch day, and I would like to talk about it. Armored Core 6 is a game about builds. Between every mission, you get the chance to buy new mech parts and switch out what parts your mech is made out of. You have the actual build of the mech, getting to choose your head, arms, torso, and legs, but then also have 4 weapons to choose, a left arm and a right arm, and a left shoulder and a right shoulder. Intuitively, these weapons are activated by the R1, R2, L1, and L2 buttons on the controller, with your arm weapons being on the R2, L2 trigger buttons, and the shoulder weapons being controlled by the R1, L1 shoulder buttons. Additionally, you have 3 other slots for a booster jet, a power generator, and an FCS chip, essentially your mech's targeting system. Every time you complete a mission, you get a screen saying how much money you made that mission, and how much you spent. Every bullet you fire has a cost. Every hit your mech takes will cost money to repair. The money you walk away from a mission with can be spent on new weapons and parts in the game's shop. You're going to spend a lot of time in the game's assembly screen, and that's without even discussing the game's extremely detailed cosmetic customization menu. I'm playing through the game as my best Optimus Prime. This is not a game with a linear character progression. You're not receiving experience points making your character more powerful. This is a game of side grades, not upgrades, with each piece you can put in a given slot having trade-offs. More armor, less speed. More speed, less weight capacity. More damage, more energy required to power it. Each mission is going to require something different of you, and your loadout needs to be swapped out to a given mission's requirements. Some missions require the ability to vertically ascend very quickly, so you might trade off your booster's speed for more lift. Some bosses have energy shields that are weak to specialized weapons, while others are heavily armored and require getting up close and personal. The game also lets you upgrade your Armored Core's operating system, buying permanent perks which do not require being swapped in and out, by engaging with the Arena system, a series of 1v1 fights against other Armored Cores. These upgrades are extremely useful since they're always going to help you out regardless of what build you're currently using. You're not going to be building a single dream mech that is the key to every possible lock. Rather, the game is testing you on your ability to adapt to different situations. The assembly screen is overwhelming at first, and thankfully you can always use the help button to find out what a specific stat does in more detail. But once you start to gain a working understanding of what everything means, you can get really creative with how you're choosing to approach different situations. I think the game could be better about providing some sort of hint for what specifically you might be going up against in a given mission before you start it. You're also able to go to the assembly screen and change your loadout every time you die, which means I've often found myself entering a new mission blind, only to find that something in the level is sort of hard countering whatever build I'm currently working with, only to recustomize to something that fits the situation better after my first death. That's not really difficult, that's just a lack of information. Another choice which I find rather strange is how the game deals with replenishing your ammo and repair kits. You have a limited amount of ammunition you enter each mission with, and only 3 repair kits to heal your mech. However, both of these things are replenished every time you die, which comes across as a strange choice to me. If I'm walking into a boss fight with a third of my health and out of repair kits, there's no reason not to just throw the fight and restart from checkpoint with full resources. By not making them truly limited, it just adds a small step of frustration to the missions the first time through. The game lets you replay any mission as many times as you like once it's been cleared in order to farm more money. On subsequent playthroughs, you are scored on your performance, and so here the limitation makes more sense. If you die during a boss fight on a repeat playthrough, you'll recover your resources, but also take a significant score penalty. So that's fine, but it doesn't really make sense to have repair kits and ammo not replenish upon entering a boss fight your first time through each mission. The biggest strength of Armored Core 6 is how amazing it feels in the hands. Moving your mech around feels great. You feel very large, but also very fast and agile. You can close gaps or strafe out of the way of oncoming missiles in an instant. One of the things that's hardest to get a feel for, but which is incredibly satisfying once you do, is how the game requires you to be able to do multiple things at once. Souls-likes are often noted for the almost turn-based way individual encounters play out. Animation priority is the name of the game in a Souls-like. Your character can only be doing any one thing at a time, but that's true of everyone else too. If you hit the button to attack, you're now locked into that attack. You can't keep moving, you can't dodge, you can't parry until that attack is over. That leads to a rhythm of taking turns in a Souls-like. The boss makes a move, then you make your move to counter it. Advance, retreat, until the boss is dead. These turns can be coming at you extremely fast. In something like Sekiro, the boss might attack 8 times in a row before you get a chance to respond to it with anything but a dodge or parry, and that's where the difficulty lies. But it is ultimately a game of single actions happening in any given moment. Armored Core is not like that. Your weapons are on 4 separate buttons, and you can fire all 4 at once if you've got your brain wired to do it. It's not a question of attacking or dodging, it's a game about successfully doing both of those things at the same time. This is what you need to learn to beat the game's first boss, the HC helicopter. This thing wiped the floor with me initially, as I attempted to hang back and dodge its volley of missiles, looking for sparing openings to strike. What I needed to do was close the distance as fast as possible, dodging its initial volley of missiles while boosting closer, and overwhelming it with my own unrelenting attacks at the same time. This game has a system very similar to Sekiro's posture bar, where enemies can be staggered and opened up to massive damage by taking attacks in quick succession, and hitting the helicopter with a sword combo will generally do the trick. One thing which concerns me about the game so far is the difficulty curve. It's not a problem that Armored Core 6 is hard, I'm really enjoying the game's difficulty so far. It's just that the game's difficulty has been extremely uneven. There's only been 3 encounters that have legitimately given me any trouble so far. One of them is that fight with the attack helicopter at the very beginning of the game, before you've even unlocked the ability to customize your mech at all. And then the other 2 are back-to-back boss fights at the end of Chapter 1. Everything in between those encounters, the 9 missions, I believe, which fell between them, were still a blast to play, but they weren't especially challenging. That's not a problem, the game is fun when it's hard, and it's fun when it's easy, but it makes me question the value in putting such a brick wall at the start of the game if it's not indicative of the difficulty you're actually going to experience for another 5 hours or so. The missions in between didn't feel like a typical FromSoftware difficulty hell. They felt more like I was playing an old Godzilla game I used to love on the GameCube, swatting helicopters out of the sky with my missiles, destroying tanks with a single shot from my plasma rifle, and otherwise just generally feeling like the game is a big toy box about throwing my cool action figures together. Then, when the game does decide to get difficult again, it comes at you with the big boss of Chapter 1, Balteus, who is so many orders of magnitude more difficult than anything that's come before, that it not only required a few hours of attempts to learn patterns and figure out tactics to overcome him, but ended up requiring a few hours of grinding through old missions for me. Not only for the cash to buy mech parts better suited to fighting Balteus, but also to practice the game's controls and learn the rhythms better than playing the game up to that point had done. Although the missions in between were pretty easy, that's not to say they weren't fun to play. 2 standouts in Chapter 1 are Operation Wall Climber, and especially the somewhat blandly titled Destroy the Weaponized Mining Ship. Operation Wall Climber has the player attacking a large resistance facility, dodging cannons lining the massive wall you're trying to infiltrate before reaching the top and fighting the game's second major boss, Juggernaut. Juggernaut is almost completely impervious to damage from the front, so getting around back will be the only way of defeating it. Luckily, you're accompanied by another armored core who distracts the enemy to give you a chance to easily get to the back side. When the boss reaches around half health, though, the other armored core leaves to intercept a group of reinforcements, and so Juggernaut focuses its full attention on you. It frequently charges forward, so getting around the back of the enemy requires quickly dodging out of the way and then turning around to hit it as hard as you can, before it turns to meet you again. It's not too difficult, but it is a very fun and very memorable set piece. My favorite mission so far, though, easily, in a walk, has you scaling an absolutely massive walking mining ship called Strider. Up to this point, the game has done an excellent job at making you feel big, as cars barely come up to your ankle and you tower above the tree line. When you see Strider, though, you feel truly small. The mining vessel is the size of a city all on its own, and the mission is extremely well directed visually, as you first approach the vehicle through a sandstorm, first just barely able to make it out in the distance before the scale truly sinks in. At the front of the ship is your target, a massive laser cannon eye which shoots at you from a distance, requiring extremely careful dodging. The whole mission feels like a cut Shadow of the Colossus encounter, as you first manage to get to the top of the vessel by cutting one of its legs out from under it, then quickly jump from the back segment of the ship to the front as they jettison it to try to shake you, and it falls to the ground from under you. Then you make your way to the front using your mech's surprising aerial mobility, destroying shield generators along the way until you fight the eye directly up close and personal. Finally, when the eye is destroyed, you jet away back to the surface to get clear as the entire ship detonates in a massive explosion. The whole mission takes maybe 10 minutes, but it's a truly breathtaking spectacle. The game's visuals are spectacular across the board, the skyboxes especially being some of the best I've ever seen, and I've been playing the game on both PC and my Steam Deck, and it's been running buttery smooth on both, which is a relief since Elden Ring's PC port was abysmal at launch, and it still leaves something to be desired over a year later. Most of the other missions from Chapter 1 feel much smaller in scope, more of arcadey, quick one-offs than in-depth, meaningful new levels. That's okay though. Some of the most fun I've had in the game so far has been running these missions repeatedly to try to maximize my score. The game's story hasn't really made much of an impression on me yet. It's not like the Souls games where following the story is difficult because of how it's told. The story here is told very directly through cutscenes and dialogue. I just haven't gotten very invested in it so far. It doesn't seem particularly bad, but it doesn't seem like anything too special yet either. Mostly just a fairly standard set of mech tropes. Different military factions vying for control of the planet Rubicon. There is a bit of a narrative twist at the end of Chapter 1, which has me interested in seeing more, but the story isn't driving me forward to see more just yet. That said, I'm still early, and I'm optimistic that there will be some meat there later on. Overall, it's very heartening to me to see FromSoftware feel the creative freedom to stretch their legs, instead of feeling beholden to making what has been proven to sell. Elden Ring is undoubtedly a masterpiece, and I look forward to seeing any future Souls-likes from the studio, but too much of a good thing is how you end up with companies like Ubisoft milking the same formula to death, and although their games have been excellent so far, I'd rather FromSoftware feel free to make something else in between Souls-like projects rather than running them into the ground. So far, Armored Core 6 has been an absolute delight. I can't wait to spend more time on Rubicon, to find new ways to customize my Armored Core, new weapons to use, and new missions to embark on. If you've been holding out on Armored Core 6, it's a heartfelt recommendation from me, at least from what I've played so far. If you're still watching this video, then thank you very much for being here. If you liked the video, then please consider subscribing or checking out other videos on my channel. I tend to do more long-form video essay-styled content on my channel, but I want to start doing more quick impression-styled videos like these on what I've been playing in between those longer videos. Shorter videos which won't, by the way, necessarily mean I won't cover the same games in a deep dive form later on. I did a similar video about the demo for an upcoming horror visual novel called Slay the Princess a few months back, so if you want to see something more informal like this, go check that video out. Special thanks to my patrons for making this video and all the other videos on my channel possible. The following people have pledged $5 or above to my Patreon in order to help me keep working on this channel. Picayune, Alex Stewart, Hakan Boyam, Pete Lee, Jimbo Jovian, Nittend, Shiny Emptyhead, Lucas Craden, That's All, Alex, Bell Mage, Malachi Murphy, and Dunio. Thank you once again. If you'd like to get your name read out in future videos or to see supporter-exclusive videos, then check out patreon.com/Zuldim. I recently put out a supporter-exclusive video about Hitman's elusive target mode, which I think is pretty fun. I also think I'm going to open YouTube memberships soon. My goal is to have the same set of perks as much as possible with the same exclusive videos there, so if you'd rather not use Patreon and would prefer to use the YouTube membership system, then that'll be an option shortly. Until next time, I'm Zuldim. Thank you for watching.